People think they're introverted, you know? I thought this too. I thought in the start that I was introverted. But it turns out I was just talking about things that I didn't want to talk about and I had the wrong friends. So I'll explain what I mean by this. But just a few days ago, let me tell you a story. I was coming back from school. I usually bike back from school. I was biking on my way back and I see this one guy. And, I've known him for a bit. Like, we were in classes together, right? We didn't really talk much. He was kind of like quiet kid, he's smart. He does his work, whatever. He's a little Indian kid. And I was biking on my way back, and I'm like, yo, what's up, bro? Like, what's you doing? Like, just catching up. We hadn't talked in like a year. He was in my calculus class. And I'm like, like, you doing the advanced classes now? Like, what's up? Just like catching up and stuff. And he just kind of like, we just kind of stood there waiting. We had to cross the road, and you know how like there's like the stoplight, and you have to press the button, and it says wait, wait, and then it's like that little Walkman sign. We were like waiting for it, right? We were just standing there, and he's like, "So I heard you like read books, and like people are always talking about like, oh, you got the book, and you always just." So I do this thing with books where I just flip through, and people are saying, and he said to me like, people are saying like, do you even read the books, or are you just like flipping through pages? And I'm like, yeah, bro, I do flip through pages. Like, half the stuff is boring to me. He's like, what do you read? And then I went on talking about, like, I'm into philosophy. I'm into all this stuff. And he's like, that's so interesting. He's like, what book you reading? I'm also kind of into that. He's into, like, science fiction and stuff. So I told him some of these books. I'm like, yeah, like, I read, Feynman. And I've never heard anyone say that they know Feynman. This guy is Richard Feynman. He's a famous physicist, and he has this book called 6 Easy Pieces. I think I have it. Whatever. He has this book, 6 Easy Pieces, and he's like, yeah, I know Feynman. I'm like, oh, have you read his book? And he's like, yeah, 6 Easy Pieces, and I'm like, yeah. And then we started talking about that, and the sign for like walking across the sidewalk, it turned white. Like, it was that walking man sign, but we still just continued talking. And we sat there talking. We went from that to talking about like free will, to talking about just a bunch of philosophical stuff, then psychology, then the ability to think. And all in all, like, we stayed there for so long. I'll tell you what, school ended at like 2:15, right? And we met at around like 2:18, 2:20. And we were there until 3:15 at that one sidewalk talking. For a whole hour, I was able to talk to this guy who I thought was introverted. But simply, he never had people to talk about the things that he always read about. I never had anyone to talk about the things I'd read about. There was not a single silence in the entire conversation. It was a smooth debate. We had a good conversation, strong eye contact. This guy was confident in every word that he said. I literally, like, I hadn't seen this guy talk ever. In our class, and here he is having a whole conversation with me. And he told me at the end, he's like, not many people read the stuff we read. I'm like, yeah, I know, the search for truth really leaves you isolated. And when I went home, that's when I questioned the concept of introversion and extroversion. I'm not introverted. I just have the wrong people with the wrong conversations around me. Let's define what introverted and extroverted means. Introverted means you don't really talk much, you don't really speak up much, you're kind of like small eye contact, you're not really confident about what you say. And right, that's 4 things. Now what do you think extroverted means? It's probably the opposite of those, right? You talk a lot, you keep heavy eye contact, you're confident in what you say, you're very willing to talk about stuff, you're able to hold the conversation, it doesn't get awkward. Now, what do you think is the linking key between those two? The only way you can practice introversion or extroversion is if you talk to another person, right? That's the defining factor. That's the only way you can see if you're introverted or if you're extroverted. People think, oh, I talk to these people, I talk to X person, Y person, Z person, I can't hold eye contact, I'm this, and then they label themselves with the concept of I'm introverted. I bet you, if I was to go and talk to someone else who was really into YouTube, who was really into the data, which I do have that friend, if we were to talk about YouTube, we would not stop talking. So what happens is me and PJ, right, we text sometimes, and sometimes we're there texting, and I'm here like, oh, like, dude, we start texting at like 5:15. I'm like, all right, I gotta go here at like 5:30, and we're still texting like an hour later about like YouTube or something. We're like, oh yeah, what do you think of this? And then he's like, dude, I saw this Twitter thread, like, what do you think? I'm like, yo, that's so cool, like, I thought about this before too. And we're just having these conversations over and over and over. And I realized it's not that you are introverted. You're just, again, just the wrong conversations. And I think of this, I try to give the example of like that the Overwatch nerd, right? This nerd who plays Overwatch. It's like put him in front of people who talk about fitness and um, geeks who talk about, I don't know, anime and stuff. Like he wouldn't relate to them. He'd be shy sitting there. He would have no confidence in his words because he doesn't know what he's talking about. He wouldn't make eye contact because he doesn't want to participate in the conversation because it's not interesting. And he'd just be sitting there like, what am I doing here? He'd have closed body language because he doesn't really want to participate. Again, like no eye contact, just no confidence in what he says because he doesn't know what he's saying. Get the guy to talk about Overwatch ranks, Overwatch characters. This guy will light up. Put him in front of a computer, give him a good setup, give him a nice gaming mouse, a nice gaming computer. This guy's lighting up. He's destroying you in the game. You will never see a man more extroverted than when they're doing or talking about the thing that they want to talk about. So if right now, again, if I took that Overwatch kid and I put him in front of the fitness geek, if I try to bring him into our group, like I try to talk to him, I would have no way to talk to him. I would not be confident what I'm talking about. He's bringing up, oh yeah, like I reached rank 70 in Overwatch, and I'm here like, I didn't even know Overwatch had ranks, you know. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Huh. 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 Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, man, I gotta head out, and nice meeting you. And so like that's the whole conversation. But again, like if you get me talking about this stuff that I really want to talk about, self improvement, YouTube, you know, philosophy, psychology, then I will have a conversation with you for hours on end. When I used to go to the gym, right, they had a little sauna, and I would go there. I just sit in there for like, I say, okay, you know, 15 minutes, I'll sit out, right? And I found this really interesting. When I used to sit in there alone, which sometimes happens, right? The sauna's empty. You go sit, take a seat in there alone. After 15 minutes, you start sweating like crazy and you start dying. You're like, bro, I have to get out of this room. Like, I can't survive another minute. Like, you feel it getting to your head. You're going to die. Like, you'd pass out if you didn't leave. But I realized the next time when I came in and there was a group of people just talking, and we get into a good conversation. I remember this one time we had a conversation about Jesus and Christ and religion and free will, all that stuff. I accidentally stayed in there for an hour and a half. I didn't even think of the heat because we were all talking about the thing we wanted to talk about. They stayed in there for an hour and a half with me because we all had such a nice, smooth, long conversation. The heat didn't affect me at all. That, I think, is the value of good social conversations. I wasn't introverted or I wasn't extroverted. I was just talking about the things I wanted to talk about. And because I talked about the things I wanted to talk about, I was confident in what I said. So my body language opened up. I kept eye contact because I was interested in what they were saying. And I just genuinely wanted to continue the conversation. No pauses, no awkward pauses. Because I knew what to say next because I had an opinion on that. It's such a simple concept, yet people always label themselves, oh, I'm an introvert, oh, I'm an extrovert. Here's what I think is an analogy for that. Let's say I take you out when you're 7 years old. I take you out to a seafood store. Sorry, not a seafood store, like a seafood restaurant, whatever, right? And, you know, I got you to try one of the fish. But what happened on that day is that the chef at that restaurant put in too much soy sauce onto the fish, onto the salmon. And for you, it's like super bitter, super like, it's just like crazy salty taste. You're like, oh, this is trash. And then you spit it out of your mouth. And, you know, you try another seafood item, let's say it's shrimp, and he does the same thing with the soy sauce, just too much. And it tastes like trash. You spit it out, you're like, in that moment, you declare yourself, I hate seafood. Now, for the rest of your life, because of one simple chef, because of his one decision, you're going to sit there thinking seafood is horrible. The beliefs you have right now are because they've been reinforced into you from the past. Because you've met with the wrong people in the past, because you've talked to people who don't talk about the things you want to talk about, you believe yourself to be an introvert. And so now, even if you do want to talk about the things you want to talk about, since you believe yourself to be an introvert, you will act in that same manner. Even if you aren't, even if you could light up about that same conversation, because you have this belief that you're an introvert, you'll continue believing it and continue acting that way. Now, what if it was the opposite? What if the day you were a child, that, let's say it was that same seafood example, right? You had that seafood, this chef made it like the best seafood he's ever made in his life. Like, he put his life on the line just to cook that seafood for you. Like, he went out, specifically handpicked this fish for you. He made sure the soy sauce was imported from the deepest roots of China. And he made sure he poured it on just for you, perfectly, just to get it across to you. And you taste it, you're like, wow, the seafood's amazing. And then you get reinforced again with the next piece of seafood, shrimp. Because of that one small difference, because you were reinforced for liking seafood, now you'll say for the rest of your life, I love seafood. Just because of one chef's decision. It's the same with friends. Except it's not one friend. It's multiple. It's multiple people you talk to, and they constantly reinforce that identity within you. And here's something that's even worse, or beneficial. I'll explain how it'll be beneficial. If you talk to those friends and you start acting introverted around them, you will feel awkward acting extroverted, because they're used to you being introverted, and they're like, yo, what's up with the energy, you know? Like, why are you so jumpy? And they'll like say that to you, because they don't expect that from you. And so it's not that the apples sucked. It's just that you picked the sour one once, and since then you've avoided the apples entirely for the rest of your life. Isn't that stupid? Just because you had one bad apple doesn't mean the rest will be horrible. Just because you've been introverted up to this point in your life doesn't mean you will be introverted for the rest of your life. You just need to find different people to talk about, or different things to talk about. And the way you can do that is simply by getting more knowledge. Now, here's the thing. I think people see... So I've been told that I'm really good at holding conversations, and I think the only reason that is because I've gotten knowledge in such broad areas of life, you know? Like, I can talk to you about philosophy, down to psychology, down to self-help, down to, physics, down to mathematics, down to life sciences. Like, all this stuff I love. Neuroscience. I can talk to you about genetics, about muscle building, all this stuff I wanted to learn, so I learned it. And because of that, I'm able to have conversations with a broad range of people. Like, think, the more basic level skills that you learn, or the more basic level conversations that you have, the more you'll be able to conversate with a lot of different people. Because if you just specialize in one or two things, you will have people who want to talk to you, but it's a much smaller pool compared to what you could have if you had learned a lot of other things. And so this is what I think of TikTok, right? If you're on TikTok and the algorithm is made specifically for you, the only people you'll be able to relate to are the people who have that same algorithm sense as you. And that is in real life and in comments. So if you ever go to a video, either on TikTok or on YouTube, wherever, and you go to the comments and you read a comment and you're like, wow, that's relatable. Or like, wow, I would have said that. Or wow, that's a funny joke. The algorithm has you. Because the algorithm's winning if it can do that. Because now it understands you. And now it knows the kind of conversations you like. Because think, what is the algorithm's ultimate choice, right? All it wants to do is keep you on the app as long as possible. And if your goal is to have a conversation or have a good, non-awkward conversation for as long as possible, the best way you can do that is by having conversations that you want to have. Right? And the way you can have conversations you want to have is either, again, like I said, just finding other people or learning more about the things people want to talk about. And sometimes I think once you're on the path to try and grow yourself, if you're trying to do really good in a business, it'll be hard to talk to people who aren't in that sphere, right? Who don't want to talk about business. You'll bring up some metric, like if I'm talking about YouTube, I'll be like, oh, dude, like I got my CTR up like 10%. Just by changing this one little tweak in the thumbnail where I added a smiley face instead of a laughing face. And they're going to be sitting here like, what are you going on about? But if I said that to like PJ, he'd be like, dude, that's so cool. And then he'll tell me about one of his thumbnail tricks where like he made the color red and then all of a sudden the CTR went up 3%. Now even you guys are probably like, what is this guy talking about? But you see how I like light up when I talk about that? It's because I want to talk about it. If Fortnite is your thing, go talk to someone about Fortnite. Fitness is your thing, meet people at the gym. It's literally the place you go to. Talk to people there. Ask them about their opinion. All you have to do is be genuinely curious. Just keep on asking questions over and over and over. So stop reinforcing this belief in yourself that you are an introvert or you are an extrovert, because it is not true. You've simply been reinforced for the behaviors you've been doing up to this point. And now, right now, you have that choice to change. You can be an extrovert right now, at this moment. If you talk about the things you want to talk about, you will be an extrovert because you're confident in what you're saying. And you can say it by having eye contact with people because you're interested in what they're saying. So you'll really delve in and really try to dive into the conversation. And there'll be no awkward pauses because you really want to talk about it. So try that. Try talking to people about those topics. Wherever you go, if you go to a library a lot, you read a lot, talk to them. You go to a gym, talk to the people at the gym. Just go up, yo, like, how do you do this? I see you have huge biceps. How do you do this? Right? Like, how'd you grow it? I've been trying this, it doesn't work. And then they might be like, oh, dude, you have like a huge back. Like, what do you train? And then you tell them the thing, and then that's how you get a conversation going. That's it. So try that. Go for it and have fun.